Şimdi sırada Amerikalı sanatçı Lillian Sizemore'un sunumu.
Where's the beginning? Oh, okay. I know everybody's getting really tired, and I'm sorry that it's going on so long, but thank you very much for having me, and I'm very thankful to everyone who has invited me. I'm Lillian Sizemore from the United States, and I've been living in London for the past couple of years. I'm working on my PhD in mosaic history of the mid-century. And I've been making mosaic and studying mosaic for about 20 years now. And I am very pleased to have been invited to offer one of my works to the coming Contemporary Museum of Zugma. And I chose a piece that we have seen in the past day or two. So this is the center of the mosaic it's in the Grand Hall here. And I made this mosaic between the time of 1997 and 2003, and I actually finished it in 2004. And I was going through a big change at this time in my life, more than 10 years ago now. I was living in the country. I worked as a farmer, and I had a very big interest in botany and the natural world. And I was interested in the concept of the mandala, which is a Sanskrit word for the sacred circle, which is often used for contemplation. So let's see. Yeah, so it was a big change in my life. At this time, I moved to San Francisco from the country to the city. And my husband at the time was working in got an offer for a job to work in a tech industry, which at the time was just beginning, and everyone wanted a website. And so he worked for a company that developed some of the top brand websites at the time. So it was a very energetic time. We moved into this big city, and lots of money was flowing into the city to support this startups. They were called startups, and there was called the dot-com boom. And this is a picture of San Francisco, California. So as many people were coming to California in the early 1990s, the same thing was happening in the 1880s, also happened in San Francisco, where there was a gold rush, and maybe you hear of it in the history. So at this time in 1880s, thousands and thousands of people came to California looking for their new wealth. And they were panning for gold, and there were people coming from all over America, whether they were rich or poor. And also, lots of immigrants were coming from England and Asia and Europe. And so this is a depiction of an advertisement encouraging people to come to California in search of their new wealth. So unlike the 1880s, in contemporary times, we have a time in which all of these startups were having a lot of investment from investment bankers, and credit was on the rise. And you can see in this graphic, in the time period that I was making priceless, we are in the last bits of the rise. So these credit cards were coming in the mail almost sometimes daily, but at least weekly. I was receiving offers for credit cards day after day. I didn't know what to do with them, but I thought it was very interesting. And at that time, the politics that were happening in San Francisco were everything was going to the startups, all the space, all the good studios, everything was supporting the tech industry, and it was a very bad time for artists. And in fact, the building where I had my studio was sold to real estate speculators, and 50 artists were kicked out, and we had to go elsewhere. So I actually made the piece Priceless while I was working in the country, kind of like John in the Crater Lake. I went out to the country, and this is where I worked to make this piece. The other thing I'm very interested in is geometry, and how geometry is part of us, and the underlying schemes that we can see. And this is a depiction of what's called the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci, and how harmony in life is actually through us, through our bodies. And I find that to be very inspiring as a mosaic artist, where we are working with our hands and we are part of our work. Oops, wrong way. And you see these kinds of elements and this idea of we are five and we are part of these structures in flowers and in the cosmos and in the patterns that we bring out into the manifest world. And this is a close-up of the edges of the Priceless, and there are Visa logos, MasterCards, all kinds of examples, but they all came to me, and they all have my name, and so it's a very personal piece. And in this piece I chose to use the credit cards, which have holograms, and then also the only other material I could think of that was the perfect counterbalance with this synthetic idea of value and wealth was actual gold, which has the value from earth and is a natural mineral and very valuable, versus the synthetic idea of plastic credit cards. And this is showing the idea of the pentagon, which you saw in the flowers and the Vitruvian Man. So the pentagon is a five-sided structure, and inside is a pentagram, and then on the outside is the pentagon. And with me in the center, kind of like the Vitruvian woman, it's this idea of regeneration and restructuring and coming to grips with these two conflicting and contrasting ideas. And I think that we need to have contrast, and in order to learn and grow, we have to have the good and the bad and light and the dark in order to inspire us and bring us to new challenges in our work and inspiration. And I would just like to end and say that I really see that here, especially in Zugma, where there are so many ideas for mosaic, and it's an international conference where we have this opportunity to be together, that I really hope that mosaic can be this thing that can bring us together and can contribute to bringing harmony on an international scale, that the actual making of mosaic can contribute to something that has a feeling of balance and harmony. And like the art of the muses that we were so lucky to see yesterday, that we may continue to bring forward our inspiration and value the art of the muses. And thank you very much.